Welcome. Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. And as always, sitting right over there is my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reggie?
What's going on, Kenny J? How you doing, baby?
I'm doing well. The unfortunately, the season is past the Washington Commanders, but somehow I'm struggling not watching football that tugs at my heartstrings. But I'm getting by, and I'm watching other games, and sometimes I like the results, sometimes I don't. But I guess that's the way of watching Commanders football too, isn't it?
Yeah. Too soon, man. The season ended too soon for us, man. As my screen name says, they're deja vu. Um, it's funny, man. It's it's deja vu for a couple of reasons, Ken. It's deja vu because I feel like we're right back where we were last season. It's deja vu that the season ended in similar fashion as it did last year. We
Right.
saw a one game play from a unknown quarterback that surprisingly looked good and gave the team and the fans reasons and an optimism going into the next season. If we do X, Y, and Z around this said player, and man, next year we're gonna be all right. Right?
Right.
Everything is exactly, almost exactly the way it was last year. We missed the playoffs.
Right.
We're sitting at home watching the playoffs. Taylor Heineke versus Sam Howell both showed promise in one game play,
Taylor's
and
was 2 years ago, but yeah, and but to your point, there's question at quarterback once again.
yep,
And not and to piggyback on that, last year at this time, we hadn't signed or traded for Carson Wentz. And so, but we knew we wanted to do an upgrade.
right,
But we also knew that we had a mid-round draft pick, which is going to hurt us to or make it a challenge for us to go get one of the quarterbacks that we might have perceived as being a first round draft worthy. Normally they're top 10 picks from
the
a quarterback.
franchise guys.
Yeah. And then you look at it and go, well, there's not really any good quarterbacks out there that are about to be free agents that we stand a chance at. And to your point that you mentioned, we're sitting right back at the same. Oh, and by the way, our record is pretty much the same as well, right?
So deja
And
vu is very fitting here, right?
absolutely. It and we'll talk about the entire season because this was in some ways we always talk about, or I should say, oftentimes we talk about not having drama outside of football.
Right.
Right? Right. You have, I mean, you're always going to have something with Snyder, and we did see some of that this year. But there's, players getting in trouble. There's, just different odd, weird things that happen. And in some ways, we didn't see that type of stuff that we've seen in past years that derail us. But man, there was a lot of head scratchers, whether it was football related or front office related. There
A lot of
eh,
front office stuff.
yeah,
Lots of front.
2022, from, like I said, from January 1st until the end of the Cowboys game. We went 8-1. So you would think that there was 50% highs and 50% lows. There weren't. There were a lot more lows across the board,
Yes.
than highs.
Yeah.
But we'll cover that. We'll cover that, and that's what we're doing on this podcast here.
But let's say this, Ken, before we get into for our listeners to understand here, this is a somewhat of a recap of our season. But we cannot, Ken, and I can't believe you almost let me forget this.
Okay.
We have to let our listeners know that this is officially our 100th episode.
It is.
All right.
It
This
is.
is our 100th episode, Ken. And before we get into recapping the Washington Commanders, because ironically, this was the ushering of the new organization.
Right.
We became the Washington Commanders this year. And here we are doing a recap of the Washington Commanders in inaugural season, and we're doing our 100th episode. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to all the listeners, all the people that have been following us, all of our subscribers, and the people that we know personally, and people that have interacted with us on social medias. The people we know personally, obviously from the bar, some family, some friends, and in my case, I even have a couple of coworkers who listen to our podcast, and they're not
Right.
even Washington fans. So
Right.
I want to send a big shout out to everyone that has supported us and that have listened to us over the past 100 episodes, because I can't say exactly how many years it's been, but it's certainly been, because our frequency changes, but it's certainly, this is our 100th episode. And man, this has been something that we started out to do as fun. It's still fun. We love doing it, whether we get one listener or we get a bunch of listeners. But for our listeners, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening. And again, this is our 100th episode.
And I agree with everything that you say there, Reggie. It has been fun. Definitely been enjoyable. The only thing that I'll add on to everything that you said about the listeners is this year we've had more interaction than we did previously in 2022. We've kind of the show has grown, and we've added listeners and everything, and whether it's through the podcast, whether it's through Twitter, we've had a lot of fan interaction. Had a couple people on the podcast that we interviewed or talked to or
Yep.
interacted with. We definitely we're going to ramp that up dramatically, I think, this in 2023. And again, I'm very appreciative of all those listeners, and I'm appreciative of the time that you Reggie put in on this also. For those that don't know, Reggie is probably the main person that interacts on Twitter. I do a little bit here and there, but probably 80-90% of it is Reggie. If you like what he's saying, that is Reggie. If you don't like what he's saying, he might say that's me, and that's okay. We're in this together. I'll take one for the team, Reg.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. Listen, I'm on there, and I understand that people don't always agree with what I say, but that's why we do what we do. It's a way we can give our opinion, and it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that. It's just that. It's our opinion.
yeah.
Does it make us right? Does it make us wrong? It's just that's our opinion about it, right?
Yeah.
We've been fans a long time, and we supported the team for many years.
Everybody's
Ca-
99.9% of the time they're respectable. Yeah.
yeah,
Everybody's respectable of everybody else's opinions on there. You get one loose knucklehead out there once in a while, but overall, it's been good. It's been good.
yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, so I just wanted to get that out, man. And we didn't want to do a big fanfare about it, but I want to at least let our listeners know this is our 100th episode, and
There's a little bit of fanfare, a little bit, a little late there, but
so kudos to us, man, for being able to stick around and keep doing this. And so as we get back to business, the reason why you've tuned in to us is to hear us and talk about the Commanders. And so we're going to get into a little bit of a season recap, Ken. I don't know where you plan to start with this, but I can tell you that 2022 started off with the announcement of the new name, the Washington. Com-
yeah.
I
See,
can't. I
you can't
can't.
even say it straight, right? And at
The
this point,
what? Hey, let me finish, man. Hold on.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy.
Don't let me shortchange the name, man.
Okay.
We officially became the Washington Commanders, and man, Twitter lost its ever loving mind.
Well, I think it definitely landed with a thud. right? Again, we've covered this in the past, and all the fans. I think the Commanders was nobody's first choice. To
Nah.
be frank, it was nobody's top five choices. I think it was a very generic, bland, safe choice, and and this is where, from my perspective, where I started to dig in on Jason Wright. They had a year and a half of to make a decision, and and it wasn't only the name. The name, like I said, landed like a like a big old ball of
Well,
you know.
we don't have to go back and dig into it. The
No,
point.
but I'm saying, but it did. But the thing that I've kind of I wasn't happy with Commanders. I could live with it. The next thing I was waiting on was, what is our logo going to be? And man, if Commanders was bad, the W. That's all you could come up with Commanders. I mean, you're talking about a company that's worth what? It's on the sale blocks right now for $6 to $7 billion.
Come on, man.
And I don't care who's listening to this. You go in and go to work tomorrow, sit at lunch with 4 or 5 of your friends, and come up with a logo for the Commanders. And there's about an 80% chance that it's better than a W.
I know, man. I don't mean to get you riled though. I'm just simply saying 2022 started off with the announcement of who we would become going forward, and we became the Washington Commanders. The announcement was made in February 2 2 22. So we're a few weeks away from being a year of the announcement. And that was where we kicked off, and the season went from there. You can say it went good, it went bad, but that was where our season began, with the announcement of the new Washington Commanders. So there you go.
Yeah, that's yeah. We'll put that in the as far as highs and lows. We're gonna put that as a low, right? Well, do
Alright.
we want to keep track of lows and
No,
highs?
we don't. We
Okay.
don't, man. Come on, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving.
Well, unless I'm missing something, the next kind of big news was who was going to be leading this team on the field, right? It was just before free agency was about to kick off. There were some rumors here and there of potential quarterbacks that we might be going after, but they weren't the top two or three, right? It wasn't the Russell Wilsons, and a couple other of the big name quarterbacks. All of a sudden, out of nowhere,
Well,
uh,
these names were attached to us, but realistically, we knew some of these guys aren't coming to Washington, right?
right.
There were some couple guys we hoped we'd get, but we knew some of these guys aren't coming. And then they make the big announcement. We got my man C Dub, Car- Carson Wentz. We made the trade, man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was an accidental drop there. Accidental drop there.
We signed my man C Dub, man. He coming from Indy, walked into the building. Ron said, "We want you. You here because we want you here, right? You want it here."
Yeah.
And here we thought, man, we were about to go and do something special with Carson Wentz in the fold.
Well,
And
I mean, to be fair, while I was critical of it right away, Ron and staff thought that they could they could see some of Carson Wentz the first couple years that he was with Philly, right? They thought that they could get that back. They had some tools around him, with Terry and Curtis Samuels coming back from injury, and their other plans that they were putting together, that they thought that Wentz could potentially, if Wentz could get a good second start at a reasonable price to go get him, that you know, Riverboat Ron went for the went for Wentz on a trade.
Yeah, and listen, it was met with mixed reviews. Um, initially,
That's being kind, probably, but go ahead.
no, it was there was some people who were cool with it, and other people who were just trashing it. And in full disclosure, when it first came out, somebody texted me and said, "Man, what do you think?" And I sent an emoji of a trash. I was like, "Absolutely not." And then I did a complete 180, and I
You
think
did.
it confused you, Ken.
It
It confused you, but
you know, I think what you did was, and if I'm going to be a little bit critical of my main man Reggie here, is is
come
he
on,
knew
man.
what he saw with his eyes, right? The eye test, he knew what he was getting, but when he put it in burgundy and gold, he talked himself into it.
No, that's not true.
And I
That's,
understand that.
that's
Hey,
not
I've
true.
done it. We've all done it.
That's not what I did.
Um, but
You're
go
lying on
ahead.
me.
I'll let you speak for yourself.
You're lying on me to the people. No, what I did was I said to myself, "Listen, the trade is made,
Right.
right? It's kind of like when they announced that Ron Rivera was our head coach. I was not excited about Ron Rivera being our head coach,
Right.
but I knew he wasn't going anywhere. They gave him a 5-year contract. So in this case, I had to deal with it. So what can I make sense of why they choose to go with Carson Wentz as our quarterback? And so I started to delve into a little bit and look behind, and I said, okay, I can see some reasons here as to why they wanted to go with Carson Wentz. And I myself said, well, if these things happen, we were a better team. Our coming off a good season with our offensive line, we knew we had some weapons. The only thing that Indianapolis had that we didn't have last year was the running back. They had Jonathan Taylor. We didn't have a Jonathan Taylor, but man, we felt like we had some guys at the skill position. We had an offensive line, and man, Carson, everything that Carson would represent, the big, strong quarterback with a little bit of mobility. I was like, let me see it. Let me see it behind this team. Not that I expected the Pro Bowl and the guy that was leading Philly toward the Super Bowl before he got hurt. But boy, was I wrong. Right? I mean, I ended up that I was wrong about that because Ron gambled with the offensive line. Sheriff didn't want to be here, and we'll get into some of that probably here. I don't know
Yeah.
how much time we'll have here, but clearly we lost Brandon Sheriff through free agency. People say, well, we should have signed Sheriff. Well, hell, Sheriff didn't want to be here. So if he didn't want to be here, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, I want volunteers, not prisoners.
Right.
Sheriff didn't want to be here. It was a head scratcher when we let Eric Flowers walk. We released him, and then Ron started the caravan north. I don't know what highway leads up from Carolina to DC, man, but he put a caravan together and started bringing up everybody from Carolina, and he brought 2 offensive guards that had played with him at some point in Carolina. And looking back now, it wasn't a Carson Wentz trade. It was the signing of the 2 guards that ultimately led, in my personal opinion, to the demise of our season. Because at that point, that he was never able to recover the offensive line, and then you throw in the injuries along with the center position, and before you know it, they're just juggling guys around on the offensive line. I think the only guy that was consistent was Charles Leno. Charles Leno played every snap, every single snap. Everybody
Yep.
else was a rotation of guys throughout the season. But that led to lack of protection, lack of being able to run the ball, and it was the beginning of the end of our season.
I don't necessarily.
One
There's
one
a
of the
lot.
things. There's other
There's a
things.
lot to unravel there. To this day, from the your reaction when you first heard it and you said it was trash, has was my reaction. And I never did a 180. That's the only difference between us. I never did a 180.
Oh, you did. You did not, sir. You did not.
But I mean, to be fair, I recognize some things that Carson could potentially do. It's just a matter of could he do them. I knew his weaknesses, and his weaknesses were weaknesses that are hard to correct, right?
Okay.
You don't just all of a sudden your completion percentage and accuracy just doesn't get better, right? Especially after you've been in the league 5 or 6 years at that point. Um, your tendencies to hold the ball too long because you got to make that big play, they don't just leave.
Okay.
Some of those things are hard to, you just can't coach it out of somebody's natural instincts. Now we go back to RG3. You couldn't coach him to be comfortable in a pocket. It just, sometimes things are what they are. But I will agree that Ron's, I mean, just the same way Ron gambled on Wentz, he gambled on the offensive line. And when you talk about letting Flowers go, Flowers, by releasing Flowers, that was like I want to say like a $10 million cap savings. Um, so when you took on Wentz and his 28 million, you had to start releasing and letting people go.
I don't know that he had a cap hit of 10. I think he was making 10 million, but I don't think that was his cap hit.
I had it. I don't have it on my screen here. He was I mean, the three people that were ended up being cap casualties were Landon Collins, Eric Flowers, and Ioannidis. And if we wouldn't have gotten Wentz, at least two out of three of those guys would have been back.
Agreed.
Um, and and so again, I didn't like the idea of Eric Flowers being gone and being cut. He had done well when he was at Washington as a guard, but at the same time, nobody picked up Eric Flowers, and after we cut him, we cut him early, right? We cut him in the spring, before June 1st, and with all the injuries that
No
teams have,
excuse. No excuse.
nobody brought in Eric Flowers. So,
I don't care
well,
because
you do care because Ron's evaluation must not have been
no,
terribly worse than anybody else in the
no,
NFL.
no, I'm gonna disagree with you. Just because he didn't get picked up, we don't know why he wasn't picked up. And hear me out here. Eric Flowers was better than what we had at either guard spot. So you can't. So regardless of him getting not being signed by somebody else is irrelevant to me because what we do know is how well he played here, and it wasn't like Eric was playing bad when we released him. So the fact that he didn't resign somewhere, I don't know. I don't. Maybe he wasn't an upgrade for somebody else, or maybe Eric said, "You know what? I'm tired of moving." I don't know. And none of us know. All we know is he was not re-signed. We don't know why. But what I do know, as you talk about eye test, he was playing really, really well here in Washington. Eric Flowers was the least of our worries when he was wearing burgundy gold. So the fact that we let him go and the fact that he wasn't re-signed is irrelevant.
Well,
It's irrelevant.
I'm going to little agree. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on the Eric Flowers. When Eric Flowers was here the first time, and he was here for a couple years, then we let him go to Miami. We ended up bringing him back. When he came back, he was still a solid guard, but he wasn't like he was the first couple of years when we got him from when he was released from the Giants and we brought him in at guard. Those first 2 or 3 years, whatever time frame that it was, he was
He only played
he
1 year.
an extremely solid guard. He wasn't as good when he came back from Miami. Still solid, still better than. I mean, come on, man. A bag of sand is about even with the play that we saw in Norwell on some of the games. Some of the games he was able to perform at a moderate level, but there were some games where, I mean, anybody could have just gone around and walked over him, walked under him, through him. It didn't matter. But again, that goes to Ron Rivera, his decisions and his gambling of, and because of the salary cap, when you add something here and it costs you money, normally you have to take away something else.
That's
Um,
fair. That's fair.
but
I still would take Eric Flowers.
I'm not saying
Fact
that I
out.
wouldn't.
Fact out. If he wants to come back this season, I'll take him.
We'll bring you to training camp at least, right? We'll invite you to training camp.
Hell yeah! Come on, Eric. Come on back, baby. Come on back.
Um, and while we're talking about some free agency, that we signed Wentz. As we said, we had a few of the cuts, but there were some other free agents um, that we kind of look at that we can evaluate whether they were good or bad signings. I mean, obviously, Norwell at guard was a failure, right?
It's terrible.
Um, I, and one that
The,
we're all
the,
going
the
to
only
kind
the
of
only thing the Norwells did good, and I'm gonna say they gave an assist to the Lenos when Charles was out of town, as Jen told us when she joined us on the podcast. Charles was in
that wasn't
Dallas.
game time. That wasn't game time.
That's I know, but I'm just saying Charles was out of town and Jen went into labor, and the Norwells was there to help her get to the hospital and be with her doing that thing. So they Norwells gave an assist to the Lenos. That's about as good as it gets. After that,
Right,
my man Andrew, bro, I hope it was his last game.
right,
I hope he saved his money,
right.
and I hope he go off and enjoy his millions that he made playing. Because boy, that I do not want to see him at Bergen to go next year.
No, I definitely agree. I think besides getting the money, I think if he does an honest evaluation of himself, he realizes and knows deep down he's not the player he was a few years ago. Because at one point he was a solid a
Man,
solid player in the NFL.
okay,
But
he knew he
but
knew he knew
but
he wasn't there when he came and took that money.
Father time, Reg, if somebody gives you $10 million with I think it was like almost 6 million of it guaranteed, you're taking it. You're taking
I
it. You
will,
can.
but I'm only saying that from your standpoint of you saying hopefully he does a self evaluation of himself and realize that he knew last time. He knew last year when they gave him the money. He just took the money. He knew he wasn't. Man, come on,
Sometimes people think that they're better than they
man,
are.
come on,
We all know
come on,
that.
Ken.
And I'll even say for myself, right? I can still run real fast
You
until I have
bust.
to actually run. Until I have to actually run, then I don't run nearly as fast
Come
as what
on,
I
man.
I think I can.
You own some
Uh,
Norwest. You own some Norwest stock or what? Because I don't like how you
oh
doing
no,
that.
I'm selling. I'm selling. Don't get if I have any, I'm selling.
Come on,
Uh,
man.
but with that getting Wentz and having to release some people, we weren't that active in free agency. We didn't have cap room at that point. Carson Wentz ate up most of it. Some of the people that we worked to re-sign, one of the big names that we thought was gone and all of a sudden came back was J.D. McKissick, and
Oh yeah, JD.
and unfortunately, I don't think it worked out for either one of us. Not for JD or for
Man,
Washington.
JD still be
Um,
playing right now.
what's that?
If he JD would still be playing right now if he took that money in Buffalo.
Potentially, if he didn't injure himself, right? But he played half the season, roughly. I think he played 9 games, and he was not in the mix very much, considering that B Rob missed the first 4 or 5 games from getting shot. Um, the the JD McKissick that we saw the previous 2 years, him being a tool. We talked about how
In a good
him
way.
and Terry,
Tool in a good way.
a tool in a good way. Yes, yes, a weapon. Should I say a weapon instead of
Come
a
on,
tool?
man.
And these kids today, changing up
Yeah.
words as,
Yeah.
but
I'll make sure we understand tool in a good way.
yeah, but he got lost in the mix and then just didn't perform. And again, I don't know if that's a McKissick thing. I don't know if it's a Scott Turner thing. If it was just the way the offense ran with the new people, because all of a sudden, later on you had Dotson, you have Samuels, who wasn't a weapon last year. Now he's in the mix, and sometimes, like they say, there's not enough balls to go around to everybody. And I don't know if that was the case for him or where it was, but
Even when he was active, it was very clear that he was not part of the offensive game plan.
yeah,
All right. I
yeah,
mean, I remember the first few weeks of the season, we were like, man, they're not throwing the JD. Brian Robinson was injured the first 4 weeks of the season. And it's like, well, why not put JD and Antonio Gibson in there to get? I mean, it just wasn't working. It clearly looked like JD made the wrong decision to come
right.
back to Washington.
Right.
Just from a playing perspective.
Right.
But and here he is now for the second year in a row. He goes out on IR, and his season is done. And you have to question now whether or not his playing days are done because he's got a neck injury, man. And it's it's one thing to have a neck injury as a quarterback. It's another thing to have a neck injury as a running back.
Right.
And so yeah, we've not heard anything else on him. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll be back. And he came back to sign. So this past year was his first year on his new deal.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
I think again we're dealing with a a cap issue, and money is always tight. I don't care what team you are in the NFL. Uh,
apparently not.
money
The,
is always
the
money is
Rams,
always
the
tight.
Rams seem to find money. They got a money tree out there in LA.
Yeah, they're about to they're feeling that money crunch real fast. Watch the next 2 years here. But for all the misses that Ron Rivera and staff have had at different positions of going for this and looking to try to get B and C players. One of the positions that they've done well in getting a lot of B and C players or late draft picks is on the defensive line, right? They went and brought in Obata, and while he wasn't crazy good in his role as a rotation guy, he played very well this year. We've talked about Smith Williams before, and then Ridgeway. So all
That's your
those
guy.
guys are. I mean, you can talk about Tony also. These are all low budget guys that have done very well in Washington in the rotation. I mean, granted, we know the first round draft picks, the the four across the front, but when those guys need a breather or depending on the situation, whether it's a pass or
Injury.
run, and they're rotating those guys in, man, they don't miss a beat too much, man.
And keep in mind, Chase Young and Montez Sweat both were out toward the end of the season.
Right.
And those guys play well. And the key here is not only did they play well enough, they play within the system, and the system I think allowed them to excel a little bit.
Right.
And so of course as we went into this season, Montez Sweat obviously played within the system, and Chase Young was still out for most of it. So those guys still got an opportunity to be in the rotation opposite of Montez Sweat, and they got a lot of playing time this year because Chase
Right.
came back to only 3 games, and even then those guys played. But yeah, they did pretty good on that. The other thing that happened during this offseason was the team finally made the announcement where they signed Terry McLaurin, number 17. Um,
Yes. Long term.
yeah, signed him to a actually a 3-year deal, Ken. 3-year deal,
Well, an extension.
an extension.
Right.
Sorry,
Right.
sorry,
Right.
3-year extension worth $71 million. So Terry got paid, um, and I think that made a lot of fans happy and excited that it was for the first time in a long time we were re-signing and keeping one of our own. It wasn't a franchise tag, which in turn pissed the guy off. And then we franchise and then he walks and that type of deal. But it was showing the team and the fan base that hey, we're willing to pay some of our own homegrown guys.
Right.
And everyone likes Terry. Terry is every year hands down wins the good guy award. And the player that he is coming out of Ohio State as a 3rd-round pick, man, and he was finally rewarded for his play on the field, and that made everyone happy. And then I think the only thing that happens after that is we're getting ready to go into the season, right? And
Well, I
everyone's
mean, one of the things I like to before we talk about the season, the other thing I like to touch on that is you talk about signing Terry, and then the previous year we signed Jonathan Allen. So some of the big names that we have re-signed, if you look at both of those players, they didn't just collect their money and then show up. They Jonathan Allen, after he signed his contract both last year and this year has been earning that paycheck. Terry, the same way this year, has earned that paycheck. I think that there's been,
For sure.
Washington has had a history of paying people and not getting the value of that player. So it's very refreshing from my perspective that these guys are one, they're getting paid, which I have got zero problem with it. The asterisk on that is just earn that money, and both players have.
For
Do you
sure.
want to talk real quick before we start talking about the season? The our draft. When we went ahead and we picked up, we and we've talked about this before the podcast, that most of our draft picks this year contributed, at least at some point. Starting with Dotson.
Well,
He was injured.
well, hang on. Before you,
Yeah,
speaking of the draft, um, we were sitting at, I think, number 11, right?
correct.
And we're sitting there, and it became clear as you're watching the draft that Washington was not going to trade up for any quarterback. We were just going to sit tight at 11.
Yep.
And then we get to the 11th pick.
And the draft was falling how you and I wanted it to.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Everything was going good.
For a couple players that we had identified, a couple wide receivers.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And then we get to the 11th pick, and they trade out the 11th pick and trade it back. Washington trades back to the 16th spot.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, whoa, what? You did what? No, man, we got to we sucked good enough to get the 11th spot. What are you doing? And we trade back, and then the teams that in front of us end up picking up some of the guys that we wanted. And we're like,
we were wide receiver hungry, right?
Right.
We were wide receiver hungry. A couple of now we knew one or two of the wide receivers were not going to be there. They were going to be a top 10 pick, but we were hopeful that one of a couple other names was going to be there. And lo and behold, two of them. Which one do you want?
Which one do you want
at 11?
Hey, we got to be good, man. We got to get one of these stud guys. And Washington trades back. And then when they trade back between pick 11 and pick 15,
I think it was like 11 and 12 or 11 and 13.
Those guys go off the board.
They were gone.
And we're sitting there like, what's going to happen? And then 16, I'll never forget it. In fact, I'm visiting my mom. I'm watching the draft. And with the 16th pick, the Washington Commanders pick wide receiver Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. And I remember thinking, who the hell is this guy? That was my initial. I'm like, right. Who is this guy? They have been talking wide receivers for months. The list was long. And you tell me we picked some dude named Jahan Dotson?
Well, I mean, you said the list is long. As I'll contradict you. The list was short, right? Because we figured at 11. We figured at 11 there was these 3 or 4 guys. One of these 3 or 4 guys were going to be there.
I understand. I'm not talking about the guys that was going to be there for. I'm talking about the list of receivers that are all of the scouts and the NFL talking head. When they looked at it, when they were showing a list of receivers, and I don't mean like the entire list, but when they always show the short list of guys, there was probably 6, 7 guys. Jahan Dotson was never talked about. Mel Kiper, none of those guys would talk when they would do these pre-shows talking about it. They never talked about Jahan Dotson. I never even knew the name. And I'm thinking, what in the hell are they doing? And just like Carson Wentz, I said, okay, I'm gonna give it some time.
That's a bad comparison, but keep going.
Well, my point being is I wasn't happy with the choice.
Right.
And then I had to sit back and it warmed up to it. And boy, was I wrong? Because my man Jahan is the real deal. That dude's gonna be nice. And as a fan of the Commanders, anyone listening to this podcast, you know, Jahan Dotson is the real deal.
Yeah, I think.
He could potentially end up being a better player than Terry because Jahan's a stud.
I think you're pushing it there, Reggie.
Man,
But
you
hey,
crazy.
if he is, man, that would be wonderful from a Commander's perspective. Yeah, I mean he missed. I mean, and for those that I mean, we all saw him play, but he missed 5 games. He only had
That hamstring
it's
injury.
yeah, but I mean
He's
he
so
only
fast. He's so fast. He tearing up his hamstring, man. I'm telling you,
his hamstring can't even keep up with him.
can't keep up. Can't keep up, man. Come on.
But he had 35 receptions, which isn't a huge number of receptions. But he had 523 yards and 7 touchdowns. When it comes to receptions and yards, Terry had a little bit more than double on both receptions and yards, and Terry only
Not
had 5 TDs.
exactly. That's
So
right. And Jahan missed what 5 games?
correct,
Come
he
on,
missed.
man. Listen, he's gonna be better than Terry, dog. And that
Yeah,
ain't a
yeah.
bad thing, man. That ain't a bad thing.
No. It's not. I don't know that he's going to be better. Again, I'm gonna pump the brakes on that. You know,
You're gonna remember this.
Reggie's
Episode
he's
200. Episode 200. Be like, Ken, you remember that? Remember I told you? Remember I told you episode 100, Ken. Think back. I told you
yeah,
Jahan's gonna be
yeah.
better than Terry.
All right. But then after we took Dotson, we moved on and we had our love for Alabama, especially Alabama defensive tackles, and we took Mathis. Then we took B Rob. Where's he from? Oh yeah, Alabama. and Mathis got injured second game.
First game.
But he looked in the preseason and in the half a game, whatever he played, he looked like he was going to be a solid player, man. I think everybody's going to forget about him. I think a little bit as we go into next season, but it's almost like we got him back as a draft pick, like a bonus draft pick for 2023 because we didn't get him, this past year.
Right.
But then B Rob comes along. And we touched on it for a minute there, but man, in preseason, man, this kid looked different, right? He looked different than Gibson. He looked different than McKissick. He looked like a running back, like a real.
Well, he is. He's a true running back.
That's what I'm saying. But I mean, just the eye test alone, you look at him and you go, "Man, this cat is something different." And
then he goes getting some food.
Yeah. Then he gets hungry, and you get some the world that we live in. Somebody
Man, he wants to go get him some food. Go get him some food on a Sunday afternoon, broad daylight, and somebody decides they want his ride. Somebody decides they want his ride, man.
Yeah, he's not at a strip club, right? He's not leaving a bar at 3 a.m. He's not doing anything remotely wrong at a wrong time, wrong place, wrong people. None of that. He's just getting something to eat. And to your point, people decided they want his car. They try to carjack him, shoot him in the leg twice.
Well, that's where he did mess up. I don't. That's where I question his intelligence. You got 2 dudes with guns, man. You want to fight them? Come on, man.
I wasn't there, so I don't know if he saw him or didn't see him or what went down.
No, he saw him. He fought one of the dudes.
I'm just saying. I don't know. I mean, they were right there for him to be able to swing. I don't think he chased after him, but
Ken, look, man.
Look, I know.
Look, that car is not worth you losing your life, homeboy.
I don't disagree with.
Listen, they say, give me the car. Here you go, man. Just give me my chicken out the front seat.
Yeah, you want me to fill the gas up while you take it away? Yeah.
Take the car. I'm pretty sure he had insurance on it, man. Go get you another ride. File a police report. But you don't sit there and fight 2 dudes with a gun.
I don't disagree.
I'm not saying he deserved to be shot. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that's his fault. But listen, don't fight dude with gun. He ain't even had no gun.
I've heard you say that rule many times in the years that I've known you.
Man,
Reggie, what should you do if somebody has a gun? You said number 1, don't fight them.
No. I mean, hey man, just give me my food, take the car, and I'm gonna call the
You're not even
police
worried
on
about
him.
the food, Reggie. Why are you worried about the food?
That's true too. But at least, hey, if you want the, my point being is, I'm gonna surrender the car. Hey,
Yeah,
dog, I just ordered some food, man. Just give me my food off the front seat. Take the car. You know I'm gonna call the police when you
must
leave,
be
though,
some
right?
good Chinese food or wherever, whatever place he went to, man.
I don't know, man, but I'm gonna call the police when you leave. Give me my food, but don't fight the dude with the gun. In fact, he was outnumbered. There was two of them, and you gonna fight the dude, and the dude who he wasn't fighting is the one that shot him. Oh
Reggie, I
my,
mean, it's a little
no,
confusing what you're saying here because you're not worried about the car, but you're worried about the food. So maybe
because
that's
they
what he was fighting over. That's what he
no,
was fighting over. He wasn't fighting over the food. I'm sorry, he wasn't fighting over the car. He was fighting over the food.
nah, man. My point is, they wanted the car. Give him the car. They didn't want the food.
I
So
understand.
just
I
give me
understand.
my food,
And,
man.
and and as soon as you hear that he's shot in a situation like that, being a Washington fan, you immediately go to Sean Taylor,
Everybody did, man. Twitter was
right?
that's what Twitter was all about. It was like everybody was hoping for the best for the kid. We didn't know how bad the injury was. We didn't know if it was going to be his life, whether he'd be able to play football again. And of course, we all thought about Sean Taylor.
Right.
And then, what? 2 days later, he shows
Yeah.
up at the facility with some Oreo cookies on
On
crutches.
crutches, but yeah, he's at the facility.
With some Oreo cookies, and we like, man. And the story behind that is they had told him, I guess, to bring some cookies, and so he showed up with his cookies.
Right.
And at that point, we was like, we like this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We like this guy. So he got lucky because at the end it didn't do any major damage to his leg. Apparently, missed all of his joints and ligaments, and it was just kind of a through and through. Put him on IR. He missed 4 games. He comes back. Took him a little bit to get back into it, and once he did, man, we found ourselves
He got
a good
improved.
one. We
Yeah.
found ourselves a good one. Um, were you going to continue with some of the draft? Because I was going to make a
Well,
point about the
y-
draft.
you can if you want. I mean, just going down the list real quick. We had the safety Butler. You had Sam Howell, who everybody kind of got at what point of the season, whether it was the last game or anywhere in between. People got high on Sam Howell. Some people earlier than others. But then you had Cole Turner, Chris Paul, and Christian Holmes wrapping it up there. I don't know if you want to touch base on any of those.
Yeah. I was just
Those
gonna
guys.
say because
Go ahead.
I have it written down here. So 8 players was drafted this past season. Every one of
Right,
those guys saw the field, which is awesome to have every one of your players not only make the team, but they all saw the field.
right,
But the point that I want to note here is, as we mentioned earlier, during this trade, when we about lost our minds when we traded from 11 to 16, that trade was with the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints made that trade and ironically picked up one of the guys that was linked to Washington, which was wide receiver from Ohio State, Chris Olave.
right.
But by virtue of us making that swap with New Orleans, we gained some additional picks.
Yep,
And to the credit of the Martins, our co-GMs, they turned those picks into, and I have a note here, the trade with the New Orleans Saints for Chris Olave turned into Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, quarterback Sam Howell, and tight end Cole Turner. Every one of those guys played and were essentially is going to be a part of our future. They're good enough
right.
to have made the 53-man roster, and they will be part of our future. So, as of now, it would appear that we won the trade. They turned
Right.
that dropping down 5 spots and picked up additional picks, and we end up with 4 players for the one. So kudos to the Martins uh, for making that deal. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you definitely kind of cringe when things like that happen because, to your point, I can give you 10 players trading for one or picks, I should say. But you got to do something with it. Your evaluation to make your team better needs to be there to do that. And yeah, this past year, just about everybody contributed. Some obviously more than others, but everybody made the team, contributed, and that's how if you can do that for 2, 3, 4 seasons in a row, that's how you make changes in your organization.
For
Uh,
sure. And Ron
Big changes.
and his staff, regardless of how you feel about them, have done a very, very good job in drafting some players that have been key foundational pieces here that we can say that this team is in a better spot. We can question how they coach. We can question the play calling and everything that comes along with it, but they certainly have drafted some good foundational pieces here that has kind of set this organization up to have some success down the road. As long as now we just need that steady QB's position to be addressed. Because I don't know that we need a Pat
Right.
Mahomes. We just need some guy that can come in here and play well enough, man, and just stabilize the position. Stop the turnover at that position. Because
Right.
the talent is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the term gets used too much of a bus driver, and I'm not saying we need an above average or a very good, let's just say a very good bus driver, right? To be able to make plays when needed, but you don't need to make plays from the first quarter to to the end of the game.
Correct.
There'll be positions and times where you need to make a play. Obviously, in the last 2 minutes, a lot of times the pressure's on you to make that score or whatever. Um, but it's some of the things that we saw this year and even last year, right? The last couple of years is the quarterbacks not consistently make the easy plays. Um, you know, it, uh, you've heard me say it before. I'll keep on saying it until everybody says it. Passes that are 7 yards and in, passes that are in the flat. Man, you need to be completing those at 85%, maybe even higher, and make it easy for the running back or the wide receiver to catch it and go. They shouldn't be reaching behind him. Look, nobody throws it perfect every single time, right? But those are easy passes that you've been doing since high school. You did it in college. You did it well enough in high school to get you to college. You did it good enough in college to get you to the pros. You're doing these passes all season long, all the training camp, everything. Those are easy passes. And those are the passes that I think we don't get done well enough here in Washington. I know Heineke has had I don't know as much this year, but in the previous year, he missed a lot of open wide receivers where he missed the opportunity for open wide receivers that might be 15, 20 yards down the field. Again, those are the differences of realizing the way people are running their routes. Somebody's open. Let me just throw it over there. And at that point, because they're so wide open, it doesn't have to be dead on the money. It just needs to get over there. They'll catch it and pick up some good yards and let these skilled players do their thing. There's a reason why Terry's making that money, because once I get him the ball, he's going to do his thing.
Yeah.
Same thing with Samuel, same thing with Dotson. Let these guys earn that paycheck,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So at this point, Ken, we're now in the season, right?
Here we go.
Season starts. And first game out of the gate, we play Jacksonville.
The lowly Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yes. Playoff bound, Jacksonville Jaguars. and
At the time they weren't, right?
and we win this game. Carson Wentz puts up some big numbers, starts out not so pretty, but man, he brings us back. We put up 30 points or whatever, and I don't remember the exact score. And boy, he hits the nice bomb to De'Ami Brown. Jahan Dotson scores 2 touchdowns, I think, and everybody just here we go. Here we go.
It was a 4 touchdown game for him, right? It was the first time that he had 4 touchdowns, I think, since the Super Bowl season. And me being the I was not on the Wentz bandwagon, but
He was a hater.
I
He
still
was
remember from week one, he had the 49-yard pass to McLaurin. And when he made it right away, I said, Heineke can't make that pass. Right. That's a difference maker pass right there. And so you saw a sample of some of the tools that Wentz can do.
game one.
And there was hope.
And we were excited. Boy, that's what we've been needing, and that's what we've been looking for in Washington for years. Number 11, he's here. Go ahead and sign him. Go ahead and give him his money, because guess what? We're getting ready to roll.
We weren't going that far. We weren't going that far, Reggie. But we liked what we saw in the first game. We knew that
Hey,
we
man,
were still a little bit critical of some mistakes during the game.
come on, man.
But
some of us
Wentz looked well.
Some of us was ready.
Oh, I know you were.
You
without
wasn't.
a doubt.
Some of us was ready. So
I saw him. After the game, we're sitting there doing shots, and I had to have him sit down his phone because he was about to buy a Wentz jersey. I was like, "Come on, man, take this victorious shot here. You can buy your jersey later."
Hey, man, stop lying to these people. Stop lying to these people. I knew. I was excited, but I was like, I need to see some more. However, so after week one at Jacksonville, we come in week two and we play, because we're not going to rehash all these games, folks. So please stay with us. So week two happens against Detroit, and it doesn't go so well.
Lowly Detroit, right? Lowly Jaguars. Here's lowly Detroit.
That's right. So we go in week two, play Detroit, and we lose. And in fact, we lose the next the next 4 games. I think over the first 6 weeks of Carson Wentz's career in Washington, we end up at 2-4 over the first 6 games of the season.
Well, 1-4.
No.
1-4 in the first 5 games.
No, we were 2-4.
Okay.
We were 2-4. My point is we were 2-4 at the first 6 weeks.
Okay.
Right, and we won. We won 2. We won. We won the first in Jacksonville, and then the last one we win was against Chicago, which was an awful game, and that's the game he gets hurt.
Right.
So in Carson Wentz's first 6 games, we were 2-4, and after the first week of Jacksonville, it went bad from there. It was awful.
It went bad fast.
Right, and yes, because we were proceeded to then lose all of our next games until we play Chicago. And if I recall, it was a 12-9 victory. He gets hurt, and it was an awful game. We barely won the game, but with 2-4, he gets hurt, and then comes the Taylor Heineke show.
Well, really, on those games right there, we were all scratching our heads because we saw our expectations and hope was that Wentz was going to be better than Heineke.
Correct.
Right. And we thought, okay, our defense is going to be better than it was the previous year. Right. And you touched on the Detroit game, but on the Jaguars were week 1. Then we had Detroit and Philadelphia Eagles. Both games, we were down by over 20 points. And at halftime, we were down 22-0 and 24-0 those next 2 games, right? So we're not scoring and we're not stopping them. And you're scratching your head going, what in the world is going on here? Then we play the Cowboys and they don't have Dak. They got some
Cooper Rush.
Undrafted guy, Cooper Rush, and we couldn't rattle him.
By the way, we were at that game.
We were at that game,
and we lost to Cooper Rush.
We lost to Cooper Rush,
and I was not happy because we lost to effing Cooper Rush.
And now things are starting to crank up on Wentz as far as pressure. Right, offense isn't doing anything. There's turnovers. He's holding the ball and getting sacked instead of throwing the ball away. A lot of criticism on him, and we go to the Titans. And with 6 seconds left in the game, down, getting ready to score at the 1 yard line, 6 seconds left, he throws an interception. Washington that day was 1 of 11 on third downs. And again, you're like, man, are we going to see another win this year? You start to scratch your head and going, at this point we're 1-4. We somehow, you mentioned about somehow beating the Bears. We won the game with Wentz only throwing 99 yards. Couldn't even get 100 yards passing that day.
Well, Chicago was awful.
Chicago was horrible. Absolutely.
They were awful. We barely won that game.
And we could have easily lost that game.
Yep.
If you were watching that game, we could have easily lost the game. Actually, the reason why we won that game was because of a muffed punt, right? There was a muffed punt down there at the 10, 15-yard line, and we drove it a whole, I'll just say 12 yards, and B-Rob rushed it in, got his first touchdown.
Okay.
Right.
So, again, we're not going to go through all these games.
Right. But that right there, again, we talk about,
But he hurt his finger on that game.
Wentz did. Correct. He did keep playing, but he did hurt his finger. But at that point, it was a win. We'll take a win as a win, especially with all the ugliness of the previous 4 weeks. And in comes Taylor Heinicke. Right?
And over the next 5, 6, 7 weeks, we go 5-1-1. And that leads us into the bye week. So Taylor Heinicke comes in, and we start winning. Your boy was like, I don't know how we're winning these games, but we're winning. And I wasn't ready to jump on the Taylor Heinicke bandwagon. Ken was sitting up in the engineer train, leading the show.
That's not true.
Twitter was going crazy. We don't know how we're doing it, but hey, Taylor Heinicke, we should have started him. And all of the Taylor Heinicke knucklehead folks just come out of woodworks, and he should have been the starter from the beginning, and this and that. And I'm sitting there like, Taylor Heinicke, I'm exaggerating, but Taylor Heinicke threw for 50 yards and we were winning. I don't know how.
It's a big exaggeration, but yeah, go ahead.
You look at it, he was averaging about less than 200 yards a game, but the team was winning. And after having gone through the first 6 weeks of the season, going 2-4, the winning streak was there, and I was like, I don't know. And I think a lot of people are like, we don't know how this team is winning with this guy,
right?
But we're winning. And clearly, we know that the philosophy of the coordinator changed a little bit. He went from trying to have the quarterback pass for 40 times. We started running the ball for 40 times.
Right.
And there was a change in the offensive philosophy that was more geared toward Taylor managing the game instead of trying to be the reason we're winning the game. And then at the same time, the defense picked up a little bit. And as I said, over the next 6 weeks, the team went 5-1-1. And that was right before we headed into the bye week. The only loss that week, the only loss during that streak was to Minnesota. Ken, I don't remember what the situation was, but I do know it was something happened in that game where we should have beat Minnesota, but we did not. It was the Kirk Cousins game.
Yeah, that was Ridgeway blowing up the center on a field goal that gave them first down.
Oh, I don't know how I forgot that one because, man, I was pissed off at Ridgeway. I think I went off on Ridgeway on this podcast.
Absolutely you did. Absolutely did.
So I don't know how I forgot that. But, yes, we were actually winning the game. We had a chance. That's right. They were getting ready to kick a field goal, and we had a chance to get the ball back to drive the field and go win the game. But Ridgeway, don't get me started. I won't get started, Ken. But Ridgeway makes the bonehead play.
Absolutely.
And give them the ball back, first down, and then they pretty much just go on and we lose the game. And that became the infamous video with Kirk Cousins on the plane with the gold chains with his shirt off, and everybody knows
looking like a fool. Looking like a fool, right? well, during that period, as you said, Wentz went out, and we finally, because we had been calling for it for a while, finally went to a running game. The very first week that against the Packers that Heinicke started, we rushed the ball 38 times for 166 yards, right? And like, hold on now, we see the recipe. And while you exaggerated with me being all giddy about Heineke coming back,
Oh, that was
um,
not exaggeration. Oh, that
no,
part
no,
was
no.
not.
Now hold on a second. I was ready for a change because Wentz looked like trash, right? So but I'm not happy for Wentz. I mean, I'm not happy for Heineke. What I will say for Heineke this year versus last year is one of the things that I think was the growing and maturity and potentially coaching on him is he had this year he had a lot less I'll call them Heineke plays, right? Where he's forcing something to happen. He was much more controlled. Uh, Granted, Heineke is limited on his skill set, but he didn't gunsling it like he did the previous season. Um,
He did, just
uh,
not as
and,
much.
and, yeah, well, in the right situations, right? I will say, after saying that about him, you got to remember, on the Vikings game, there was two things I can't believe you don't recall, you don't remember
Oh,
on this.
I know. I'm letting you do it, but I do.
Do
Go
you?
ahead.
Okay, so the Ridgeway blowing up and basically giving away the game was at the end. But you recall what happened earlier in the game
Is
when
this when he threw the ball to Curtis Samuel with five
Curtis
dudes around him?
Samuel. Oh well, yeah.
There's five
But
dudes
not
around
not only
Curtis.
triple coverage, not only well, I guess it was double coverage with another safety coming over into triple coverage,
That was three dudes.
but it it was the referee taking out one of those three, right? And so now it was only double coverage because he recognized that he saw the angle of the ref, knew he would take him out, and Samuel made a great adjustment on the ball, came down with it. Just an absolutely crazy play,
That was a Taylor Heineke play.
ridiculous play, and for Heineke that works out. For no other quarterback does that work out, right?
So to that point, he was still doing Taylor Heineke stuff, just not as much.
In that moment, he was. Before we move on to the other games, the one game in there that we did win that I just wanted to kind of touch base real quick was the first Eagles game.
Yep.
Um,
They were
if,
8-0 at that point.
yeah, and if I'm getting Eagles were undefeated, right? They're the only team left to be undefeated. The previous season, we came up against the Steelers that were undefeated, and we ended that streak. And lo and behold, we did it again this year against the Eagles. The this might be the one time where Scott Turner put together a good game plan, and the players themselves executed
Everything
it.
came together that night.
Yeah, offense, defense, everything. I talked about rushing it for 38 times. On that game, we ran the ball 49 times. 49 times. We had time of possession because that's what we were doing. We're just wearing down the clock. We weren't gashing them for 10 yards and 8 yards. It was just enough. It was just enough for long drives. We held the ball for over 40 minutes to the game, and Philadelphia had it for less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, we doubled them
Um,
up that time.
yeah, it was a great win. It was a shocking win. Um, and yeah, that was one of the highlight games of the season.
Yes. And so again, this is all during that 5-1-1 stretch. So the one loss to
Right.
Minnesota, and then that was the first two games against the Giants, and we tied. Everybody remembers the first tie, and we go into the bye week. But we go into the bye week feeling pretty good about ourselves because at this point we got roughly about 5 games left to go. We played the Giants coming out of a bye week. The Giants was going to be coming off, I think, the Eagles game or something. But we felt like we had a leg up because we were getting the Giants at home.
Right.
And we were going into this Giants game needing to win roughly 2 out of the next 5. We were sitting in the 6th spot for the playoffs.
Yep.
In the driver's seat, control our own destiny. You win 2 games out of the next 5, you're in the playoffs, right? Not that hard, right? Not that hard, Ken.
You wouldn't think so.
And what do? We go 1-4. We couldn't even win 2 games. We went winless in the month of December. Winless. And again, we needed to win 2. We won 1, including we lost to the Giants. So the Giants, they didn't sweep us, but essentially it's like we got swept by the Giants. And after that Giants game, the first, which was our first game out of the bye, I told you then that game told me everything I needed to know, and I knew at this point we were not ready. We're not a playoff team. It didn't matter what we did from here on out, backing into the playoffs, needing help to win, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah. And nothing changed. I wasn't trying to be doom and gloom about it, but it turned out to be just as what I thought. Then we play, I think we play Chicago and somewhere in there.
49ers.
I'm sorry, the 49ers, which we knew we'd lose. And then we played not Chicago, but Cleveland. And I don't know what the hell Cleveland game, I'm sure you'll touch on it, is the return of Wentz, because at this point, Taylor Heineke is not getting it done. He's
Well,
not
yeah,
looking. He's not looking good.
yeah, the offense is struggling. And Heineke's just playing very average. But most of our criticism that we have at this point of the season, we do have it for Heineke, but the majority of our criticism at this point is focused 100% on Scott Turner.
Yes.
Right? Scott Turner, how he's putting game plans together doesn't make sense to us. And then his in-game
because the defense is playing well. So all of the focus,
correct,
to your point, is on the offense. Why is it that we can't score more than 20 points in a game?
7, more closer to 17, 15 points.
And so to your point, everyone is focused on Scott Turner and his game plans. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's his game plan overall. It's how he is using or not using the skilled players and tools we covered, with Samuel and Dotson and Terry and B Rob, and I guess at this point Gibson's injured, but he's got tools that he's just not using.
And his flow and calling of the game. Things are working in the game and he would abandon them. Things that were working, he wouldn't stay with it. And a
lot of bad calls on third down, a lot of bad play calls on third down or fourth down that you just scratch your head going, that's not a bad play. It is a horrible play at that point in time and yards in the game. And that was just like a reoccurring theme all season long. Definitely the back half of the season, but I'll say all season. But it just was crazy. So Ron, Riverboat Ron, the gambler, decided, you know what, we're gonna shake this up. Let's bring in Wentz. Wentz has been healthy.
That's right, Ken. That's right. Bring C-Dub back.
Yeah, he's healthy and been sitting on the bench for a few weeks, and he's probably learned something, right? Watching Heineke not force it most of the time. I mean, he makes mistakes, but he didn't. He didn't.
If I recall, Ken, he said we needed a spark,
and that was a spark. It was a spark, right? It was a spark that that started the dumpster fire.
Oh my God. It is. It was awful. This is the game against Cleveland. And it oh my God, it was bad. It was bad.
And for those that missed the podcast, Reggie, how long did it take for me to lose my mind on Carson Wentz on that game? Just in that game.
I don't know. I mean, I think his first play.
It was the very first play.
You was waiting for him to do something. I know it, man.
I wasn't waiting. I was hopeful. I said
his first pass.
In this circumstance, I said I understand the move. Right? I don't know if it's going to work out or not going to work out, but I understood the move.
That man threw one pass.
You needed something. His first pass was an incompletion, an easy pass in the flat, and and the guy didn't even touch it. The guy's in the flat. The running back just swings out, and the running back can't even touch the ball. Right?
Oh my God.
We are already covered about how I feel about those plays, and right. And then the very next play, what is that? It's an interception.
I
And
understand.
even Reggie at the game, first he was laughing at me because I went off on him on the very first play, and immediately after that, Reggie couldn't do anything but drop his head. He dropped his head, kind of chuckled in disgust. It wasn't a happy laugh; it was a in disgust laugh.
Well,
And
part of it is I couldn't defend Carson,
of
and
course not.
and I knew you would just, man. Listen, you know what? You know how they on cartoon when the head explode? No, that was
Yeah.
Ken. If he was a cartoon, his head was gone,
Oh,
exploded. Carson Wentz,
he looks so bad. He
and
looks so
it
bad.
didn't get any better for Carson in that game. And I think everybody at that point knew Carson's time in Washington was over. Even if you wasn't sure before the end, or you was questioning, maybe not.
Right.
After that game, you pretty much knew Carson's time in Washington was over.
Well, if Carson would have played well in that game and then come in played well against Dallas, I think there's a well over
It was high,
50%,
absolutely,
well
absolutely.
over 50% that he was going to be back next year. But
But that
man,
game pretty much
he laid
secured
an
his future.
egg. I mean, look, he picked up right where he left off, right, playing horrible,
It
and
wasn't good, man. It wasn't good.
well, and then to top that off, right, the very next week against the Cowboys, the decision is made. Well, where are they going to go? Are they going to go with Wentz again? Are they going to go to Heineke? What are they going to do? And they decide, heck, let's see what we have in this rookie
And
and
the
Sam
kid,
Howell. And I, I almost didn't know what to think. I know a lot of people were happy. A lot of people, when we were struggling, were screaming for Sam Howell, Sam Howell, Sam Howell. It was one of those things that some people say, "What do you got to lose?" I'm like, "Well, there's a lot of things you got to lose, but
right.
uh,
We were in the minority, Ken.
is he even ready?" I didn't have a problem with it, but I didn't like it either.
Right. We
Right?
were in the minority when it came to that decision.
Yeah, because I think you kind of were like me, right? I don't like it, but it is what it is. It could be better. It could be worse.
It could potentially do more harm than good.
Correct.
Was kind of our thinking behind it, right?
Yeah,
And what does the kid go out there and do?
plays a solid game. Plays a solid game. Yeah,
Yeah,
a- a-
he does a decent job.
right.
He didn't throw the
And,
ball very many times,
no, no, no.
but when he did it, he looked good throwing it. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He didn't look like the game was too big for him. He looks like he knew what he was doing out there. He threw with anticipation. He threw with some accuracy, and he truly just ran the offense. And leading into that game, you and I pretty much felt like we were going to get killed because we were missing a lot of key players,
Yeah,
and the Cowboys had something to play for that week because they were trying to beat us, and then with Philly loses, Dallas would have gotten home field advantage for the playoffs.
right.
And
So
Sam
Dallas was
Howell,
playing with, yeah, Dallas wasn't holding out any players, and
no,
Washington was holding out a lot of players.
right, and Sam Howell said, "Not today, not today, sir."
No, no,
Sam says, "I get paid to play, just like you." And the players went out there, man, and they showed up for Sam. Sam looked good. And then again, everyone on Twitter lost their damn mind again because Washington fans don't know how to get along. It's either you're right or I'm wrong. And so the fact that Sam Howell played well, you had all the "I told you so's" for the people who didn't want him to play, and then you had the "he should have been playing all along"
right.
crowd.
The ridiculous part of it, yeah,
Yeah, and I even told a couple of people, I was like, just the guy you saw playing in week 18 ain't the guy that would have been playing in week 5, right? I mean,
correct.
there's a reason that he sat and learned over the course of the season. the mistakes that he would have made in week 5, he didn't make. I mean, so the fact that he played well in week 18 doesn't equate to he played well early in the season. But people are so stupid; they don't understand that.
Well,
And so,
yeah, and it's a matter of, I mean, to your point there, it gave him, 16 weeks, if you could count the bye week, 17 weeks plus the preseason to learn the plays, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest
yeah,
things on a rookie. The first few weeks is, you don't know the playbook, you don't have your timing down, you don't know the speed of the NFL, and he was able to go through an entire training camp like that. And hey, for one game, he rose to the level, and I just can't imagine how happy he was and his family was. And in your first game in the NFL, you're playing against the hated Dallas Cowboys,
yep,
and
yep,
at home, and you come away with a game like that. It wasn't a perfect game. He had, the one pass that he had. I think he really only had one what I would call bad pass, and that's the one that got
correct,
intercepted. Um, but on the same game, we were kind of scratching our heads because some of the skill sets that he has is the same skill set that Heineke has, but Scott Turner didn't call the game the same way. I mean, he ran him a couple times, but even besides running, he moved the pocket. The pocket rolled to the right several times through the game, to where he rolled it and he either had the option or he just rolled to the pocket, did his read, and made made the throw. And like, why didn't you do that with Taylor? The
correct,
whole game,
correct. Um,
whole season,
but
I should say, whole season.
yeah, yeah, and to that point though, Sam Howell did what he was supposed to do, and he looked good doing it. And at that point, it was just like Taylor. It's just like it's just like
And
Taylor, right?
I
Here, yeah,
said it
here,
right away too.
here we go. Here we go. And the point, and what I'm getting at specifically is it took us back to 2 years ago, right? They called in some kid who's on the street, out of the league, former XFL, sleeping on his sister's couch. He comes in, he plays, and almost beat Tampa Bay. Tom Brady,
Exciting game.
right?
The way he played that.
If you're a
Yes,
Washington fan, we call it the pylon game, right? That's when Taylor Heineke
exactly.
becomes the legend. He's diving for the pylon, and everyone's like, "Man, this guy, where's he been? He's running around, playing like clothes on fire, right?"
Yep.
And man, if we do this, we build a line, we do this, get him some receivers, some weapons, and run him, do all of these things, let him be our quarterback, we're gonna be on our way.
And people were ready to hand it over to him,
Oh,
right?
they was ready to hand it over to
Ready
him.
to 100% hand it over to him.
So Ron goes out, signs Ryan Fitzpatrick instead, let him compete with Taylor. We know the story. He gives Ryan Fitzpatrick a starting job. Ryan Fitzpatrick throws 6 passes, I think, for the Washington Commanders. Gets
Yeah.
hurt. Taylor Heineke has a full season. And all of a sudden, Taylor's not a guy. Taylor's not a guy. I mean, he's good.
Right.
He's a he's been a good backup, but he's not a guy. We need a quarterback. We need a quarterback. So they trade for Wentz. People were not happy. And then they drafted Sam Howell. So now fast forward, Sam Howell plays one game, just like Taylor did, and he looks good doing it. The difference is Taylor didn't get the win. Howell got the win. And what are these fans doing? Man, all we need to do is get this. We get our offensive line, we get this, we do this, all these things like that. Build around this guy, man, and off we're going to go. Next year, we're set. And all I said,
Yeah.
on Twitter, Ken, was this was Taylor Heineke deja vu. And my point in saying that was just simply being, you see a quarterback who looks good for one game. I understand the excitement. Pump the brakes. Tap the brakes a little bit because we've seen this before. I understand Sam Howell has a higher ceiling than Taylor Heineke. I understand Sam Howell would have been a first round quarterback, apparently, before all of his talent left to the NFL. I understand all of the things that make Sam Howell different. But the league has always got guys who looks good coming out of college. There's always guys that can run the ball and do some things and can look good with limited action. The coordinators don't even have any tape on Sam Howell, y'all. So all I'm saying is Sam Howell could become our next Hall of Famer. But he can also become our next Dwayne Haskins. Rest his
100,
soul.
100%.
God rest his soul. Because I'm not talking about what happened to him in his life, but as a football player, Sam Howell could easily become Dwayne Haskins. So all I'm saying was just hold on before we anoint Sam Howell as the next future quarterback of the Washington Commanders. And man, people lost their damn mind on Twitter because I put that tweet out there. But I stand by what I said.
I agree 100%, Reggie. The only thing that I would add to that is the people that are jumping on the Sam Howell bandwagon. I hope you're right. Reggie
Yes,
hopes you're right. Right?
absolutely.
Right. But we can't, in good faith say, hey, we're not doing anything at quarterback in 2023 other than it's Sam Howell or bust.
Yeah, bring it back up for Sam.
Yeah.
No,
We got to be smart about that, right? We got to have a plan, and
not
again,
according to the Sam Howell people.
yeah.
We just need to build around him, Ken. We told you this is who he was. He should have been starting all year.
And your
Hell, are
point
you
about
talking about?
yeah, and your point about upside, like you said, we can go down the list whether it's Haskins. I mean, you say, look, RG3 is acting like an idiot on Twitter on a regular basis, but Kirk Cousins is still playing in the NFL. So who has more skill and upside? Did Cousins or did
Right.
RG3? And I would say RG3 definitely had more skill
That's
and more
right.
talent. He just
He's
couldn't
a
put it
Heisman
together.
Trophy winner, Ken.
Yeah, and he just
First,
couldn't
what
put it together, right?
he was going to be a first round pick.
After the first few games of the season, his rookie season, we thought, man, this is it. We struck gold, right? Pump the brakes. Let's give defenses chances to make adjustments. Let's see how the quarterback grows. And look, man, I would love to go buy a Sam Howell jersey because he deserves for Knucklehead Ken to have a Sam Howell jersey on my back. But you got to show me more. You got to show
look,
me
man.
more.
Sam Howell is a 5th round draft pick, right? He fell in the draft to the 5th round. And I give all the credit in the world to Sam Howell for keeping his head down, going about his business, learning the trade, learning his craft, just working hard to put himself in position to have had the success that he had in week 18 against the Dallas Cowboys. Man, he deserves all the credit. He's the one that put in all the work for that.
Absolutely.
But as a fan, I've been a fan of this team for a long time. I understand how it looks good and then it's not. So all I'm simply saying is just hold on, because I would want nothing more, to your point, Ken, is for Sam Howell to be successful and for him to see his second contract, because his second contract would be a big contract if he's the guy. So I want nothing
Sure.
more. All I'm simply saying, people, just hold on. Give the kid a damn off season. He played one game, y'all. One game. In fact, the Cowboys didn't even have any tape on the kid.
Right.
He played one game. Let's just give it some time. And if he's the guy, he'll be the guy. Guarantee it.
I mean,
He'll win the job and he'll be the
yeah.
guy.
I mean, he only completed 11 passes. Right? 11 passes. All right. He looked good in his 11 passes. He scrambled around, made some good throws.
He was accurate.
And one of the things that I commented during the game on is, again, something I've already said. He made the easy passes look easy. The guys The wide receivers and running backs on those short passes were catching them, most of them, right in stride. And again, that is quintessential of the basics of being a successful quarterback, right? If you can start hitting the longer passes and reading defenses and making the adjustments at the line of scrimmage, like a lot of the great quarterbacks do, that's the next level you need to get to, and we'll see if he can make it. We'll see if he
Yeah.
can make it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I'm not hating on Sam Howell.
No, not at all.
Not hating on the kid, man. I like him.
Yeah, yeah.
I need him to continue to be that guy, and I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him,
Uh,
man.
Moving on. So after the game, I was waiting to hear in the locker room after the game that immediately afterwards, I wanted to, how they all go in, and he got the game ball, right? And after they handed Sam Howell the game ball, I was waiting for Ron Rivera to turn and fire Scott Turner in the locker room in front of everybody. That's what I was hoping for. I didn't get my wish,
Okay.
but a couple days later, I don't know why it took so long, but a couple days later, um, we no longer have Scott Turner calling our offense in the NFL. How's that make you feel, Reggie? How's it make you feel?
Listen, man. I think I was on the get rid of Scott Turner bandwagon before you did. I
Uh,
I I was I was on that bandwagon long
Look,
before.
I will say, if Ron Rivera, Jay Gruden, whatever, some of these coaches get fired, you have some talk about it. Some people understand it, some people like it, some people don't like it. There is there You cannot find me a Washington Commanders fan that is not happy, excited that Scott Turner is gone. There's nobody hanging on to Scott Turner saying if he only had this one more year, he didn't. Somebody got injured. There is none of that, right?
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because you're right, but also you you asked me and then you took
I do what?
you asked me and then you took over. You asked
Well,
me how I feel about it, and you're like, "Hey, man."
you're
No,
right.
go.
You're right. You're
No,
right.
go ahead, man.
You're
You
right.
go. Go ahead.
I mean, while I'm at it here, Reggie, you're laughing so hard you can't talk, so I got to take over here. I mean,
How you feel, Kent?
give me a number, right? Give me a number between 0 and 1% of what are the chances Scott Turner is offensive coordinator for another team in 2023, right?
Yeah, it could be good,
Your odds are
man.
between 0 and 1%, right? Not
I
hundred
don't know.
percent, 0 and 1.
Listen,
It's
I don't
zero.
know. I don't know, man, because the way the NFL works is people get multiple opportunities. So I think Scott Turner will get another opportunity. Okay,
Not as offensive coordinator.
okay.
He he
Either way,
he, he might be a quarterbacks coach. He might be, what do they
that's
call it?
fine.
Quality control coach.
That's fine. But as our guy, I'm glad he's gone. I hate when these guys move on and stuff because I know the domino effect from a human side. I know the domino effect of families having to move and they're losing their jobs and got to get the kids out of school. I get all of that, and so from that perspective, I really don't hate that for coaches. I don't care what organization. When you
Well,
have
that
this
goes for
blight,
players too. That goes for players
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Sometimes I can't wait for them to get cut, but I hope
yeah,
they have a wonderful life. Yeah.
yeah. You get this Black Monday thing and all that kind of thing. But at the nature of the business, yes, it couldn't happen fast enough for us to move on from Scott Turner. Um, so yes, I was very happy that the move was made. The unfortunate thing is the timing of it. Meaning, if it made this move a year ago, then we might have had a chance at some of the top echelon of offensive coordinators because the situation we're in now is that the ownership is unknown. And with the ownership being unknown, you're asking someone to come in here and potentially be on a 1-year deal. And the guys that have options, your top coordinators, your guys that are going to have options to go and be something in other places, they're not coming to Washington. So you're looking at getting the guy that's unproven, or you're getting a retread. So you're getting guys that have been sitting out the league the past year or two,
And,
you're just getting this what I call the second tier of guys.
yeah, and to add on to that real quick, Reggie, is we talk about the ownership and everything, but you also don't have, who's your quarterback going to be next year,
Right.
right? I mean, as offensive coordinator, you don't know what your quarterback situation is going to be either. So
And
go ahead.
the report has come out that Washington is letting potential candidates know that Sam Howell is going to be the guy. He's QB1, or he'll have a chance to compete. So Sam Howell, when they bring in the veteran quarterback, when they bring in the quarterback next year, because technically Sam Howell's the only quarterback under contract. Taylor Heinicke is a free agent, and everyone's expectation is that Carson Wentz will be released. So technically, that leaves Sam Howell's the only guy in the contract. So the plan supposedly is to bring in a low cost veteran to compete / back up Sam Howell. But Sam Howell's job to lose, essentially, and that's, according to reports, is what they're telling potential candidates to come in and work with, essentially a rookie quarterback. Yeah. So again, we're not getting the top tier guys, given the fact the uncertainty of the ownership situation, and so that's what we're dealing with. But if the guy can come in and do a little bit and get some production out of his players, a la what the hell Daboll and those guys are doing with the Giants, because you can't name me one Giants wide receiver, but yet that team continues to win. I mean, hell, they beat Minnesota.
Right.
Right. They're going into the next round of the playoffs, to the division round of the playoffs. So, but they've built an offense that maximizes Daniel Jones. Right. We've seen the picture floating around on Twitter where it's a picture of Mike Vick, who's looking like he ran through some flour, and they're calling him the white Mike Vick.
Right.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny. But they're doing things to maximize what Daniel Jones does well. He's passing the ball and he's running. So whoever the coordinator is, if he can come in here and maximize the potential of the guys, then hell, I don't care what his name is.
Well, and that's what we were saying, throughout the year was I don't want to keep on bashing the person that everybody in the brother is bashing, but Scott Turner never made this team better than what their skills were. Right. He never maximized the skills of these players. He never outcoached the opposing team ever.
No creativity.
Yeah, and but I will say, this is going to kind of be we thought it was going to be a make or break year potentially for Ron Rivera. This next year, he's getting a 1 year grace, I think, mainly because of the ownership change, right? Snyder's not going to do anything good or bad. He's just going to be status quo and leave it to the next owner. But Ron Rivera, he's got the name Riverboat Ron for gambling a lot, during the game. And I will say in 2022, more of his gambles lost than won. And you can't coach in this league for very long by doing that. I think he's a good man. He's a good leader, but we all have to question whether he's a good head coach. And I mean, he gambled
wins and losses, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And the direction of it also, right? I mean, he gambled, him and staff gambled on Carson Wentz. I would say that failed. He gambled a lot of times on fourth down, and him and staff, again, this is always him and staff, right? But him and staff failed on fourth downs a lot. And even whether they should or shouldn't go for it on fourth down, they lost. He gambled on Scott Turner sticking around because there was a chance that he might not have been back this past year, but he gambled and stuck with Scott Turner. He gambled and brought Carson Wentz back, right, on the Cleveland game, which we talked about. He lost with that. And I'll say another gamble that him and staff are realizing now and even commenting on that they lost another one is they had a chance to extend uh Deron Payne, right? They could have optioned his last year and potentially signed him, but they didn't. So
I don't blame him for that
I
one
think
though.
that I think the chances are that he's going to be back, but you could have had him at a lot better rate, just like they did with Kirk Cousins, right? There was a time with Kirk Cousins that they could have had him. You can say whether that was a good move or bad move, but they could have had Kirk Cousins at a substantially lower price. But they were they wanted to see more. They wanted to see more. They wanted to see more. While I understand it, that is a gamble that you make. And in this case, the gamble is going to end up costing them, either costing them money or costing them a good player
Well,
leaving.
hindsight's 2020. I don't blame them. I don't think anyone would have been okay with them giving Deron Payne 19, $20 million based on what he had done up to that point.
But I don't
Given
know
what
that
he
but again, I don't know what's behind it, but the chances are you could have paid him
what
15, 16 last year, and now you're going to pay him
okay, but let me
20,
say this
22.
though. But okay, fair enough. But let me say this. Sometimes it's not just about the team, Ken.
I
How do you know?
understand.
Maybe they. I'm gonna just play devil's advocate. Maybe they went to him and said, "Hey, listen, we like to go ahead and try to work on a contract," and they said, "Not so fast. We want to go in and see how we do. We want to bet on ourselves." I mean, you can't negotiate by yourself. So if Deron's Payne and his camp said no, we'll bet on ourselves, then it forces Washington to wait and see what happens in the offseason.
But that's not the way the talk is. And I'm not, look, we
Well,
do
what do
this.
you mean that's not how the talk is?
That's not how the talk was in the offseason. It was that Washington, I mean, we all assumed going into the season by the way Washington had talked and not picked up the options and everything that he was going to go. And don't get me wrong, they do this with every single player, right? You do this with the with the whatever somebody that you signed to a 1 year contract. Obata, right? We signed him to a 1 year contract. Well, we could have signed him to a 2 year, 3 year, 5 year contract. You make a gamble of where you think the person's talent is, and is it going to be worth it? They gambled on in this particular case, and they gambled wrong. And it's not that they gambled on this one wrong. It's when I put everything together, there was a lot of losses on the gamble
I
this
don't
year.
blame them on the Deron Payne. I understand it's hindsight 2020. If you look back, they probably would have worked that deal. But I mean, yeah, we can all say, man, they should have did, and we wish they had. And I'm with you, but I don't know.
There's
I don't blame them for that one.
but there's good teams consistently, not that they hit 100%, but they consistently make those right decisions. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, they made the right decision with Terry. They made the right decision with Jonathan Allen. At this point, they may sign him and he may have a great 5 year, 6 year, however long the contract is, and it may work out fine, but they're just going to pay more to keep that talented player here. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So I'm gonna say last but not least here. Um,
Yeah.
is I think the thing that's on the horizon is all the reports are coming out that Dan Snyder plans to sell. What they're saying is
Man,
what they're saying
video audience was happy about that.
it's gonna happen soon. But I think soon is relative because soon to me is like next week, but they're saying
Right.
soon could be February, March. So soon. Okay. We won't get into a whole lot, man. Everybody knows that the best thing going forward for this organization is for Dan Snyder to sell. And apparently that's where we're going with it. At this point, I'm just waiting to get the alert from ESPN on my phone that Dan Snyder sold the team. I don't personally need to get into a whole lot of thoughts on it. We all know that it's time. So at this point,
Right.
just hopefully soon comes sooner than later.
Right. And I mean, being here in the Dallas Fort Worth area, we've been insulated to some of the Snyder stuff over the years, and so I was kind of I will say it took a number of years before I was on the I can't stand Dan Snyder, right? There's a lot of people in the DMV area that were there before I was, because I saw, from my perspective, I saw a lot of things that he was trying to do. He wasn't going about it the right way, but he was always trying to do things that in his mind benefited the Commanders, right? And but yeah, I think at this point, as you said, it is time, and it's not only time for the Washington Commanders fans, because we've been ready for this, right? I think from a Snyder perspective, it's time for him. If I was advising him, not that he's going to listen to Knucklehead Ken, but all aren't you? If I'm talking to him, haven't you had enough bad press? You're going to make a crazy amount of money, and so your investment has worked out. You had the team. Who wouldn't, as a fan, who wouldn't want to own their childhood team, right?
Right.
Whatever, football, basketball, baseball team, I would love to own any of those teams. He was able to do that, and but yeah, it's time to go. It's time to go for him and for all the Washington fans.
It is. It is time. And with that, it is our time, Ken.
Yeah, I think normally we have a number, right? Normally you're used to hearing this right here, right? We don't have a name and number for the show. We haven't had a show where we didn't have a name and number.
Well, it's been a while. It's been a while,
Yeah,
man.
I mean,
So
you could give a number on the season, right?
I'm not
Or,
doing that.
or a grade on the season.
I'm gonna give, if that's okay, I'm gonna give it a 5. We finished 8-8-1. I'm gonna give it a 5. You
5.
know,
Yeah.
but we'll wrap this up, man, and just simply say, again, we want to thank everybody for all of the support and tuning in and listening to us and being part of our show. Um, you see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen. We're very active on Twitter at the2knuckleheads. That's DA, the number 2 knuckleheads. And so always follow us on Twitter, like and subscribe to this. You get all the alerts when we're on YouTube. And we're on all of the streaming platforms for podcasts. So the name of my podcast, as you can see behind Ken, is Burgundy and Gold Knuckleheads Podcast. If you just do a search, podcast, and whatever platform you use to listen and stream music, we're there. You will find us. You'll
If
see
you
the
if you want to
same.
listen to us twice, one on one platform and one on another, that
You can do
we're
that
on them.
too.
We're on
You can
them.
do that too.
You can bounce around.
But we tried to make it easy for you and be consistent. So Burgundy and Gold Knuckleheads Podcast is the name. You'll find it on all the platforms. If you want to listen, if you want to watch and see your boys, of course, we're on YouTube. We're on the YouTube channel. You can like and subscribe that and get notifications whenever we drop these episodes as well. But that's what I got. I think down the road here, we will make a few changes to the show
Yes.
as we enter into the off season for our team here. And so be on the lookout for that, some changes, and hopefully to bring you some more things, some more new exciting things, some new guests, some more guests, and
Keep
just
on. We're
hopefully
going to keep on growing the show. Absolutely.
keep on growing and keep on moving and keep on bringing you all of the off season things and give you our reactions and our thoughts and opinions about things that are happening with our beloved Washington Commanders. So, with that, Ken, unless you got something else.
Just throw your left hand up, right?
What? What in the hell?
Yeah, that died. That died at one point this season. But I'll just give you one more chance. Hey, that was
He'll
another
be back.
highlight for those that liked it. That was a highlight of the season. Maybe that might have been the highlight of the season.
It'll be back. It'll be back next year. So, all right, folks. So until next time, y'all, we will be back in a week or two with another episode. Peace out.
Peace out, knuckleheads.